All right, so let's go fetch some data from the server. Right, notice that we have this URL, and the way to do that is using a built-in function called fetch, and you can guess what it does. Right, it fetches, giving a URL. It goes and creates an HTTP request, right, to whatever endpoint you want to hit, and it comes back with a response from that server. Right, you need to one of the arguments is the URL that you want to use. Right, so you can pass in the URL, says, hey, go fetch me data from this endpoint, and whatever it comes back, right, you want to perhaps assign it to the response. And then we can do maybe a console.log. We want to log maybe the response and see what we get back. Let's run that again. We can take a look at the inspect so that we can look at the console that comes back. We can look at the console. And notice that instead of the array that we were expecting, right, it didn't actually get an array. We can also look at the network axis. We can look at the network. Oops, no, we'll look at the network. We see that if we refresh, we see here the actual request happening. Let me put this down below so we can read it better. We can see that indeed we did the query. There it is. There's our get. See the header? It went out, OMDB, the Batman, the API key, don't use my key. It came back as OK. The server said, yep, here it is. And the data actually came back. Right? The data actually came back. There it is, my search. Right? Everything's there. So this is what I was expecting, right? But in the console, actually, what got displayed is not the array, right? But that's exactly what we thought we were going to do, right? We assigned it here, and then we console displayed it. Instead, what we get is a promise. What we get is a promise, right? This is very, very similar to the promise we used last week when we were talking to interacting with Mongo, right? MongoDB, right? The query out to Mongo was also asynchronous, right? And what we get back was a promise saying that, hey, at some point in the future, hopefully near future, I will give you the response, right? And it gives us a chance to register for a callback when that comes back. All right, so let's do that. So instead of doing that, what we're going to do is the same thing we did last week. We're going to register for a callback, right? We're going to say, here's a function. Here's a function that takes in as an argument the response. And what we're going to do is we're going to do console log the response here. Okay, let's see what that does. Okay, here, all right, it's not a promise anymore. This is the response that came back from the server, and it's not quite what we expected, right? It's got an OK, it's got a couple headers, it got a status, so it's a little better. It's a little better, but not quite what we're expecting. Actually, the response happens to be in the HTTP body, right, of the response that comes from the server. We need to parse that, right, because the response, the data, the payload data that comes back is in the body of the HTTP response. We need to parse that. To parse that, we can say return the response.json. Right, so the JSON function of the response parses the body of the HTTP response, right, and then it comes back as a JSON object. Okay, if we run that again, it's not quite what we expected. Actually, no, we didn't console log it. Okay. It's actually complaining that it doesn't know what to do with this response.json. Okay, we have a curly bracket, an extra curly bracket in there. Do I have, what's this, console? There we go. So this parsing is also a promise. This also is a promise. It's also an asynchronous response, right? So what we're going to do is that we're going to return this. Remember, this is an implied return. And we're going to do a then right here. And this is hopefully the actual data that comes back. Hopefully this is the results. And we can do the console log results. All right, finally, this is the parsed JSON that came back from the server, which we can then notice we have the movies inside the search object. Yes.
So is the second dot then just waiting for the data
To be parsed.
It's just waiting.
Yep.
At that point.
It's not waiting. It's registering a callback saying once you're done parsing it, notify me, right? There is no wait. In JavaScript we try not to wait ever since it's a single thread that is running, and it'd be very dangerous to compromise that thread just waiting on something to happen. You know, that might not ever happen, and the whole browser would lock up. Okay. All right, excellent. So we have data. Let's actually render